On the show today, we have Pete Licata, a World Barista Champion, coffee consultant, and now entrepreneur. After winning the WBC in 2013 as an American competitor, Pete went on to work at Nomad Coffee Group here in Australia for several years, setting up their mega roastery. We talked about it before. Kirk went and visited. It's the size of a house. And where he was there, he also worked on various other things. But now, with a pregnant wife, congratulations, who has an insatiable desire for coffee, Pete is on a mission to serve you the coffee you want. He's doing coffee with different levels of caffeine in it so you can have it morning, noon, and night. Welcome to the show, Pete Licata. And as you know, I'm one of your hosts, Rowan Cook.
And I'm Kirk Pearson. Together we are
It's Just Coffee.
Pete joined in. I like that. That's the sign of the cool kids. That's the sign of the times. If you join in, that means you're a podcast listener. It means you're cool. Pete, welcome to the Cool Kids Club. And welcome to the It's Just Coffee podcast.
Thank you very much.
Now, I want to just chime in, first of all, by saying I am furious and devastated by the lack of Rowan in Dubai. That looked like one hell of a trip. I've been hammering all of the episodes coming out of there. They were great. Those little 20-minute snippets, I think that's a great format to do when you're traveling or at a show because you get a little bit of everyone. You kind of get what you need to say. Congratulations, boys. That was a fantastic effort.
Hey, that was a team effort. The reality of making a podcast is there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. I, as the host, booked the guests as well, and then it was a bit of a mission, making sure that they were all on time, making sure that we got it all facilitated. Then Liam is up till I don't even know what time, just making sure it's all edited.
I was getting messages at 3 a.m.
We were at the pub after, enjoying ourselves, and Liam's just sitting there editing. So, kudos to him. Kudos to Sam, our cameraman that was also there. It was a great trip.
Yep. And I have a heartfelt request to our listeners in doing that. So numbers going through the roof.
Okay.
They're great from all the downloads, all skyrocketing. One of the things we're seeing is we've got a good amount of subscribers that are out there, but 5 times the amount of our subscribers are regular listeners who are listening to every episode but haven't hit that subscribe button. I just want to let you know it helps us out so much. It helps us grow this. It helps us make the podcast better. It helps us communicate with you guys. So please, if you're sitting right now looking at your phone, listening to this podcast, listen to my sultry voice, then hit that subscribe or follow button. We would greatly appreciate it and we love you.
Well, let's put it like this. It's a bit of a trade-off. We'll keep doing free podcasts for you. You just hit that subscribe button. How's that sound?
Yeah,
Tell 2 friends.
That's the payment right there.
Hey, what do you reckon? Should they do it?
I believe they should.
All right. Well, we always start off the podcast with a bit of coffee news. So, Liam, if you could lead us in.
We haven't done this in a little bit, huh?
The top 100 best coffee shops in the world have been revealed, and Australia once again is topping that list, coming in with a bunch of winners. At number 1 in Australia, Toby's Estate Coffee Roasters. Well done. But that's not it. We have a bunch more coming in. We have Proud Mary Coffee from Melbourne ranking in at number 4. We have Coffee Anthology, I believe in Brisbane, ranking in at number 8.
Well deserved.
We have Veneziano Coffee Roasters ranking at number 7. How do you say this one? We have
Calais.
We have Calais Coffee in number 27. They're just down on Gertrude Street. And then we have Exchange Coffee, I believe in Adelaide, ranking in at 37. So Australia, once again, if you're in those cities, go and visit those coffee shops because they're doing us proud.
Yep. We love the cafe culture in Australia, and big congrats to Toby's Estate Coffee Roasters as well. I think it's a well-deserved title. They make fantastic coffee at their shop. They've got a frozen menu there. The original manager, a guy named Jack Staplefelt, who really kicked things off there and led the way, and I think it's well-deserved. They do great coffee. They're doing innovative things. A lot of people are salty about it, but, good on them.
Yeah.
Good on them.
And I thought since we were, hearing someone else's list, why don't we hit it with a little bit of, this is my top 3 coffees to go and get in Melbourne.
Oh, okay.
Number 1, loving the vibe. Bench Coffee. Loving the city. Love the roaster. Had a great time there.
Okay.
Great service. Really enjoyed it. Number 2, I'm going to throw out Maker.
Oh.
Yes.
Again, really enjoy it. Went out to the roastery the other day. Got some great coffee served up there. Beautiful. Now, number 3, I was going to throw in a classic of honor, but they've been dethroned by a little cafe called Project Zero Coffee. Because it's all about experiencing something different, and you're going to get something you've never had before at Project Zero Coffee. They've got amazing co-fermented coffees. It's a new experience, so go and check them out.
And we got some more absolute El Fuego coffees coming on the way. Yeah. Got some Bolivians coming, just ordered some coffees from Colombia, some good shit coming our way. In the spirit of list, though, I mean, even though I am full of congratulatory, favor for Toby's Estate, it's not my number 1 pick. But that's okay. There's a list of criteria. It's voted. I don't know how they worked it out.
It's a big company. It's a big organization, you know.
But I wanted to give my top 3 cafes that I've ever been to. And I'm sure you guys have been to most of these, but hear me out. Number 3, don't look, Pete.
I'm
Coffee Mamea in Tokyo. That they do. That's black coffee only, but they do. It's an awesome experience. That I've had some of the best coffee in my life there. That was number 3. Number 2, Code Black Coffee here in Brunswick in Melbourne. I think the best filter coffees I've ever had are actually from Code Black. The best coffee I ever had was made at Code Black. Their filter, I will say, outshines the rest of their coffee, but their filter is so good that they make it onto this list. And then there's number 1, and Liam knows what the answer to this is going to be because it's I just went there. Benchmark Coffee in the UAE. You guys have to go. You have to go. These guys are changing the game. It's in a different emirate to Dubai. It's called Sharjah. But honestly, best cafe I've ever been to in my entire life.
Wow.
That's a great list.
Pete, you got any?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say Cafe Mamiya Kakeru, which is the one that is the experience center in Tokyo.
Yep.
If we're talking global, I would think that there's a place in Kansas, in Lawrence, Kansas, called 1900 Barker, which is a coffee bakery that makes incredible food and drinks that nobody knows about, but everybody absolutely should.
One more.
I feel like, if we're going to put Project Zero on this one, I think that we should probably say something about Hide's Omakase Cafe.
Oh, Cocoon. Now,
Yes.
Four-person bar.
Yeah.
So we interviewed Hide over in Dubai. That was an awesome experience. I haven't actually been to Cocoon, but I would really love to go.
You're missing out.
We'll make a plan. We'll make a plan. But there's 2 other. Sorry,
I just wanted to ask because we did interview him. Part of that experience, I'm sure you've been and had a great deal of time. Is it true that the way that you get into that cafe is through a hole in the side of it's hidden?
You have to crawl through.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Yes.
You have
I love
to
it.
cocoon.
Yes.
You have to
You have
cocoon.
to emerge a butterfly as a new being. So, World Barista Champions, top 3 coffees in the world. That is a good list that you need to listen to.
All right. I'm all for it. There's 2 other pieces of news, though, before we lead into the podcast.
Please take us.
Now, there's one that's not coffee related at all, and, I just selfishly want to put it in here. Dimitri Bivol, undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world in boxing. My favorite boxer ever, my favorite athlete ever. And, everyone who watches this podcast or follows me on Instagram knows I'm a big-time fight fan. Dimitri Bivol, I love it. Footwork, combinations, just everything. He fought a guy called Arthur Beterbiev he's like a marauder. He just comes in, just punching you with
Kirk, it's just coffee.
Yeah, I know. But
If we're going to talk about sports, let's talk about Big Mouth Coffee's Jimmy Butler getting traded.
Big
Mouth. Big Mouth. That's what my coffee company should be called.
Great
because I never
series.
shut up.
Hey, we met the big face guys over in Dubai.
Yeah. But Jimmy Butler now playing for the amazing team, the Golden State Warriors.
Oh.
What a time.
There's
Just
guy
got some
waving in.
bloke waving in at the
I like
door.
that.
Yeah.
Now, next story, and you guys both may have seen this. Starbucks laying off 1,100 workers in management today.
Well, if the CEO wants to make, 94 million a year,
94 million big.
you got to let go of some stuff.
But it's not just staff getting the chop. It's the menu too. So here's a list of just some of the drinks that are getting the chop.
oh, no.
All right, you ready, guys? Iced matcha lemonade.
Oh,
Espresso frappuccino. Cafe vanilla frappuccino. White chocolate mocha frappuccino. Java chip frappuccino. Chai creme frappuccino. White hot chocolate. Royal English breakfast latte. Honey almond milk flat white. So I'm really sorry, Rowan. They're gone.
Oh, all my favorites.
all
the
of your
fraps.
favorites. But yeah.
I wonder why all the fraps. Lots of fraps. Maybe too much blending. Too slow.
But
Too
he's
slow,
getting paid
for sure.
94 million buckaroos.
So just enough.
Just enough.
Just-
but honestly,
It's good.
guys, I could have done that. Brian Nickel, you're getting paid a lot of money. I could have done the exact same thing. Do you reckon you could have done the same thing?
You know what? I would have to try really hard, but I could do it. I think.
But you could do it. You know what? I wonder, why were there ever that many drinks in the first place? Like, who made that decision?
Got a menu creep. Come on.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
You know.
Wow.
They just all build up over time. No one really pays attention, and then you have 750 drinks on your menu, and you got to cut 3 or 4.
Well, anyway, Starbucks, they're trying to change things. But anyway, let's get into the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to start by asking you a question, Pete.
Oh, okay.
What is your coffee order?
Oh, my coffee order. You know what? My coffee order is usually a filter coffee.
Filter coffee.
Yes,
Okay, what do you have? Like washed, natural?
washed.
Okay.
Washed.
You're a wash
100%.
guy?
Like I like a good natural. I'm not going to say I hate naturals, but I love a great washed coffee.
Okay. I did a pre-interview for our next guest that'll be on the show in 2 weeks who, for their business, they exclusively buy washed coffees. So I've got some hot takes about that. But anyhow,
And what's the go-to brew method? Are you just rocking that W60, just
love the
signing your name
W60.
on the side of it?
I don't know if many people bought the W60, but it's still a really great brewer.
Absolutely. For those
I
who
will-
don't know, the famous V60, Pete here helped create a new model with Hario called the W60, which implements both regular drip kind of filtering, but also a flatbed attachment as well.
yep.
So you can do 3 different brew method types with it.
Yep.
get the W?
Yeah,
Oh,
I have
man.
one at home. I use it every day.
Yeah.
But no, you know what? I mean, if I'm in a cafe, V60 is great. Or honestly, a good batch brew. If you can do a good
Yeah,
batch brew, like you're
absolutely.
talking about Code Black, like if you can do good batch brew, I am there.
What I think a lot of cafes could do better in Melbourne is using a refractometer. You don't necessarily have to do it every day, but learning how to use it so you can learn what the impact of kind of the ratios with batch brew are. Underrated skill. I think more people would make collectively better batch brew if they did.
Yeah, I think that really people need to know more, like the more they know about what's going on, the more they can adjust or they can make sure it's good.
The knowledge can't hurt you.
As long as you're not just using your TDS to say, hey, I got the TDS so it's good. You still got to use your palate, but yeah, absolutely.
Like it.
So you started Caffeine Control Coffee. So the idea here is coffee, different levels of caffeine.
Yes.
Tell us why you started that. Give us that elevator pitch.
Oh boy, elevator pitch is really short, right? So I'm going to have to say we are wanting people to have clarity, understanding of what is in their coffee so that they can manage it better, so they can enjoy great coffee and sleep at night, right?
Absolutely.
That's the elevator pitch. It comes from personal experience, right? So I've been working in coffee for 22 years or so. We all tend to drink way more coffee than we should. Not enough water, not enough, food sometimes, whatever else. And then we'll have a few drinks at the end of the night to kind of even out, maybe. It's not the healthiest way to go, but it's a lot of fun. But what I was finding, especially sort of last year, I was finding that I was really having, I had some stress. I had some, trouble sleeping. I had a lot of trouble sleeping. And I actually realized that I haven't slept really well in a long, long time, maybe 10 years or something, And I always had different, symptoms of potentially over-caffeination or overuse of caffeine. I would always have an afternoon caffeine crash, right? So 1:30 on the dot every day, you would just be like, if I'm going to fall over on my feet or I need to take a nap, like those are my options. Just a lot of just sort of generally not great health. It was a lot of just feeling bad a lot of times. And you usually get used to things like that. So you sort of, your body adapts, your brain adapts. So you're just like, don't really think about it. When you really step back, you realize just how bad you feel, And so that was a lot of the experience that got me experimenting with caffeine and levels of caffeine. I needed something that I needed to moderate or to cut back on my caffeine. But like I work in coffee, I can't just not have caffeine,
Yeah.
right? Like I have to taste it. Even tasting coffee for cupping or something, you're still going to get some caffeine. So what are the options? Then it started getting me thinking about blending, right? So I have done that for a long time. I've done that for Nomad Coffee Group. I did it for other companies before. And one of the things with blending is you take coffee componentry. Sometimes coffees that are really great by themselves, sometimes coffees that aren't really what you want to drink by itself, but you know that they can work into a blend and create something bigger and better than themselves, right?
So you've got 4 blends, and we'll go over what they are later, but with varying levels of caffeine.
Yes.
So go from high to low.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, how do you actually measure how much caffeine is in a coffee?
Well, we have a caffeine reader,
Okay.
right? So Lightels makes a caffeine measuring, I guess, what do they call it? An analyzer, caffeine and chlorogenic acid analyzer. It has reagents, and you just take a sample. You put a little spot of coffee that's brewed with the reagent onto the thing. It has an app. Then it just spits out a amount of caffeine per deciliter. You have to do a little bit of math to get the accuracy in terms of what you're actually having in the cup, but that's how we measure it.
So one thing you said to me in the sort of pre-interview that we did is that you said that more people are dependent on caffeine than we would realize.
I think more people are over-caffeinated and overusing caffeine than imagine that they are.
So how do we diagnose that? Because I think I'm probably a victim of this. Sometimes if I'm at the point where I don't really need coffee to function, but if I don't have it, I get a massive headache.
Yeah.
Like I feel unwell. And this happened on the weekend. Got up at 2:30 a.m., watched my boxing, and I thought, you know what? I want to sleep after this. I won't have a coffee. Felt insidiously unwell.
Yeah.
Is that an example?
That is caffeine withdrawal, right? Like that's exactly what happens when you don't have caffeine or you try to stop caffeine and you just cut cold turkey. So, the amount of caffeine that's in an individual drink, how much? How much is in your coffee that you drink every day?
Couldn't tell you.
Nobody can, right? Because nobody's keeping track of it. There's some little charts that are out there online that sort of say, like an espresso has this much caffeine and a filter has this much caffeine, but those are really broad measurements, and maybe some of them do. But I don't think that an average espresso shot has the 65 or 70 milligrams of caffeine in it that people think that they do. Is that a single shot or is it a double shot? Some sort of say it's 1.5 ounces, which doesn't sound like either. It sounds like a ristretto. But there's just what dose did they use? A 7 gram or a 14 gram double Italian style shot is going to be way different than
Rowan's favorite
22 gram, big, crazy long extraction shot, right? Those are going to have way different caffeine levels in them per serving. And then just even defining what's a serving, right? Like, is it a single shot? Is it a double shot? Is it a 8-ounce cup of filter coffee? Is it a 6-ounce cup of filter coffee? Those all those things have totally different measurements, right?
So excuse my ignorance with this, but kind of going back to the measuring point of caffeine, where are we looking at it as the main point? Like, are we saying that averaging out that Arabica or whatever has on average this much caffeine, Robusta has this, or is it more defined purely by the specific coffee that you have, the brew method? Like, where are we getting most of that kind of from? Because how much difference are we making? Like, if we brew an espresso and it's super under extracted versus over extracted, how much is that changing the caffeine levels?
Well, so the biggest thing, there's a lot of different variables to go in there, right? The first thing you have to say is Arabica versus Robusta coffee. Arabica coffee tends to have between 1 to 1.2% caffeine per gram, like by weight. And that can vary. It seems to track with elevation a little bit. So lower elevation coffees have more caffeine and higher elevation coffees have less, which would also track with density of coffee, right? Higher elevation coffees are more dense. It takes fewer beans to get the same weight. So therefore, you may be getting fewer beans when you may end up, it may very well be that bean for bean, the coffee trees generally have the same amount, right? But between 1 to 1.2% is caffeine.
And for that point, I was doing a video about it the other day. We did a light roast versus a dark roast, and we did a single scoop measured out of each one and put it into a scale, and one was reading 16 and one was reading 21 grams. So that's the vast difference that we're getting in those types of roasts.
You can have huge differences, right? So if you go by volume, if you go by weight, they both have inconsistencies in what's going on there. When you're talking about caffeine, like each individual coffee bean has a certain amount of caffeine in it. And then your roast has an impact on it. And I haven't talked about Robusta. Robusta has almost twice as much caffeine as Arabica, but different story. We're not doing Robustas right now. We might in the future. But basically, so the way that it's roasted is going to have a big impact. So then you say like, oh, I'm using a 20 gram dose. Like, okay, well, how was it roasted? Is it really dark? Is it really light? You're going to get more or less caffeine from that. How are you brewing it? So caffeine is generally water soluble, right? So it will extract really readily with most any brew method. But the access of the water permeating the coffee grinds and the amount of time that it has to soak that caffeine out makes a big difference, right? So people would usually say that an espresso has less caffeine because it extracts quickly, which is possible. But you also grind finer with an espresso. So I've found that an averagely well-extracted espresso and a well-extracted filter coffee have a similar amount of extraction of caffeine from those two things. A cold brew, on the other hand, sits in like the coffee grinds all night long, and it's going to get everything out of that, all the caffeine out into the solution.
So those anecdotes of people saying, I get more caffeinated from drinking a cold brew are true.
Totally true.
Cold brew is the most caffeinated coffee there is.
So far that I've tried, yeah.
Okay.
And I got to do a lot more testing with numbers and things like that, but absolutely. So we tend to brew cold brew as a concentrate. We tend to, we get more of the caffeine out of the coffee. Although with a steeped cold brew, you get some retention in the grinds, but by and large, you're getting more out of it. And then there may be some other interactions too. So there may be some other components of the coffee that is getting extracted more in a cold brew that is interacting with the caffeine in your body that's creating an enhanced effect as well.
Okay. So what was the product development process like for you? So you've explained this issue that you're having your own sort of coffee crashes. Your wife's pregnant. You would like her to be able to continue to enjoy coffee as well.
Yep.
So what was it like for you developing the products and how did you sort of get information on it?
Well, I mean, every product and every good thing goes through iterations, right? So the first was just taking percentages of caffeinated coffee, Arabica, and decaf coffees, blending them together and getting a result, see how they taste. That works really well. We've moved away from just pure percentage-based blends as the caffeine measurement because I don't think that's very helpful. It's not very accurate. But so the first was just to say I want to make some different ranges. I actually started with a 25%, a 50%, and a 75%, 100%, and a 0%. And it's like, oh God, okay, we have 5 blends now. It's too complicated, right? So to trim that down and say, okay, well let's go sort of 2/3, thirds and a third, so that you end up we got a good range of products, but we don't make it too complicated for people where it's just this is convoluted. So that was the next step was to say, okay, we've got 67% caffeinated coffee and 33% caffeinated coffee, and then 0 and 100. Then from there, it is sort of obviously, like I was saying, you work with it as a blend. So you're blending the actual decaffeinated coffee with the regular components. You think about what are the characteristics that are coming from the coffees that are going to work together. How do they need to be roasted and things like that. From there, we then started measuring caffeine and saying, okay, here's how much caffeine we're getting in these. Do we need to adjust it how are we going? Our first iteration of the products is basically the original percentages that we started with, and that's given us a good insight into the amount of caffeine in it. So then we refined those a little bit more, sourced a different decaf, different Arabica coffees, and sort of finalized it like that.
In terms of different decafs that you're using, do you have, because decaf has to go through different processes to remove that caffeine. There's the sugarcane process, the Swiss water process, the carbonic natural CO2.
CO2, yeah.
Well, have you found that you have a favorite style, or is it really dependent on the coffee and what you kind of get out of it?
It depends on what you want to get out of it, and it depends on what you want to do with it, right? So all those three major decaffeination methods, and we're not going to talk about methyl chloride or whatever it is. I always forget the name of it, because that's really commercial. That's the actual chemical one that's not going to be good for you. The ethyl acetate or sugarcane process has been revitalized with ethyl acetate that's been created through sugarcane fermentation processes, essentially, and that's being used to decaffeinate EA or sugarcane coffees.
Also, just quickly, do we think that's like the biggest rebranding job ever?
It is
there?
amazing.
Like, ethyl acetate. Acetate.
Yep.
I can't even say it. Ethyl acetate sounds like so chemically and horrible. They're like sugarcane processing. You're like, well, that sounds real good.
It's a brilliant move. It is from that fermentation, so it makes sense. And the ethyl acetate, it's interesting. I did a lot of research on it because we're using an ethyl acetate coffee for our beginning lineup. They all have different flavor characteristics and things that they do to a specific coffee. If you did the James Hoffman Decaf Project tasting, then you may have experienced that.
For those that didn't see, James Hoffman took one coffee, had it caffeinated, and then the 3 different processes, sent them around the world to roasters, and everyone got to try and see all the different flavors. There's some good videos up online if you wanted to check that out.
Yeah, and so I like the ethyl acetate sugarcane processed decafs. They all tend to have a similar, not the same, but similar flavor, which is based off of a fermentation, right? They are a little bit more fruity. They're a little bit more sweet. They are just more full-bodied in general, but they don't taste as distinctly like their original coffee as some of the other versions do. So for that purpose, in a blend, I think they're really great. I think they actually can turn out really, really well.
And I feel like it goes well with milk.
Yeah, it does. It cuts through really well.
Yeah.
Your Swiss water and your water, you have mountain water and Swiss water are the two main water processors. Those both tend to pull a little bit of more of the flavor out of the coffee. They have a nice textural element to them, but there's a style of flavor that on its own I'm not a huge fan of. It's not like I've had plenty of really good ones. Some are a little bit better than others from my experience so far with water processed coffees. But they're a little bit less dynamic than the original coffee. Whereas the sugarcane processed coffees will keep a bit more of the dynamic intensity. And then the CO2 actually keeps a lot of the original flavor of the coffee, but it kind of hollows out the middle of it. So it just feels like something missing when you taste it next to the regular one. I think it's the most true to form. It's the most true to the original coffee. But it has some difficulties in terms of sort of the roundness of the coffee a lot of times.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah.
Now I mean, just anecdotally myself, especially in as I get older, there's more life responsibilities, a lot more things. I feel like this is when the caffeine, that anxiety thing is hit. Like I'll know when I'm doing a day of filming and have those coffees in the afternoon, that's when I'll be laying in bed and I'm like, why am I so stressed about this thing? It's not that stressful. And then I'll be like, oh, right, I was drinking coffees at 5 p.m.
Yep.
Can you talk us through, let's talk about your products, about the 4 different ranges, about each one and what the purpose of them is.
Yeah. So we have, we'll start at the top. Start at fully caffeinated Arabica coffee because that's what everybody already knows anyway. Then we call it full speed is our caffeinated Arabica blend. We measure it at 125 milligrams per serving, and it is a Brazil El Salvador blend right now. The whole point of that one is to have something that if you just want regular coffee, we got regular coffee for you. But it's great for the morning, right? So even for me, I'm telling people, to cut back on your caffeine intake or moderate your caffeine intake. I'll still drink a fully caffeinated coffee in the morning, right? It's okay because your body metabolizes caffeine. Depends on your body and your liver function and your genetics a little bit. But most people process caffeine with a half-life of 4 to 5 hours, right? So that means in 8 to 10 hours, you're going to have a quarter of the amount of caffeine left in your body. That means by the end of the day, so if you're having a coffee at 7, 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, a full speed coffee is totally fine, right? For a little bit. But then you don't want to continue having coffee throughout the day with that much caffeine because then you will have caffeine fully running around in your system after that, right? So morning coffee, regular coffee. Or if you're a fast metabolizer, some people are fast caffeine metabolizers. This one, they could probably get away with having it in the afternoon even and not have any problems. Right. So that moves us to slow burn, which is our second blend. This is our moderate caffeine. We used to call it 67% caffeinated, but it is 67% caffeinated coffee that's in it. Then this is the Colombian decaf sugarcane process, and the El Salvador we have from Ada Batlle,
Aida Batley?
Yeah, her selection coffees. So this is El Paraiso is the name of the farm, which I have a lot of connection with her and those farms in particular. And so we're using that one in this blend. This is 90 milligrams of caffeine per serving. And it's great for that sort of second, like late morning coffee, right? It's great for that. It's also great if you just substitute it for regular coffee, right? So one of my experiments and one of the experiences that I've had is just changing to the slow burn blend and just drinking that normally like I would normally drink my coffee, cut out my afternoon crashes a lot, right? So the more you have caffeine, the more your brain upregulates adenosine receptors, right? So it creates more adenosine receptors, and caffeine blocks those, right? Because they keep getting blocked. Your brain's like, I need more, until it can't make any more, obviously. But adenosine is the hormone that essentially it tells your body that you are tired, right? And it builds up gradually throughout the day. So what happens is you block those receptors all day long. And then
sounds so unhealthy when you say it that way.
Right. Well, but then what happens is if you metabolize caffeine in a regular pace and you're going to have that half-life cut in about 6 hours, then by 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you open up a bunch of adenosine receptors, and the adenosine that's in your blood, in your system, floods into those receptors, and your body's like, oh my God, it must be nighttime because I just got this big rush of adenosine.
Oh, so it like doubles down, so it doesn't stop it. It just kind of holds off the effects.
It doesn't go away, right?
I didn't understand the caffeine.
That probably explains why I had a nap while Liam was setting up the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So if you are already acclimated to caffeine quite a bit, and you just cut down a little bit, like I say with the slow burn, I cut out my afternoon caffeine crashes like pretty much all automatically, right? So all of a sudden I was like, I've been going all day and I haven't felt tired at all. But I consider it more of a moderate caffeine, level. So it gives you more sustainable caffeine energy, right? After that, we have low impact. This is the 33% caffeinated coffee. It's 50 milligrams of caffeine. This is the coffee that my wife has been drinking since she's been pregnant, shortly thereafter, I guess I could say, and. It's great for pregnant nursing women in particular because their caffeine recommendation is generally 200 milligrams per day. So she can still have 3-4 cups of coffee in the morning and still not be going over her caffeine limit for the day. So in my opinion, it's a great option for people who have a slow caffeine metabolism, for people who have, like I say, pregnant nursing, or just generally have a sensitivity, or for that afternoon cup of coffee, because you want a little pick-me-up. I often have it, 2 or 3 o'clock. It's like, I want something. It's that ritual. You want to have the coffee. But I know if I have 50 milligrams of caffeine right now, that's only going to be, by the end of the night, it's only going to be 15 or 20 milligrams in my system. I'll be okay by 10 p.m., 11 p.m.
Yeah. Also so great for pregnant women, to have the same ritual of, because so many things change in your life once you're pregnant. To have something that's a familiarity is great. And also if you want to up your dairy intake, but don't want to just drink glasses of milk, then it's a great way to have 2 or 3 coffees with milk in it.
A lot of people probably order a weak coffee so they can have a lower caffeine amount. But this is a good way to have a full strength coffee with lower caffeine that's full of flavor and fully enjoyable.
Yeah, and all you're doing is substituting one coffee for the next, right? So you're saying instead of having fully caffeinated coffee, I'm just going to have this one instead. I'm not going to change anything else about my habits, and I'm going to be way better off for it.
And so your last one, what's the last one called?
The last one we call Smooth Sailing. And this is our fully decaffeinated coffee. Right now, it's a single origin. It's the same Colombian decaf that we're using for the other blends. Which is from a producer named Diego Lopez, Fincas San Francisco in Colombia. It's great. Like, so Craig had it at Criteria, which is where we're roasting, and he had it on the list. He was like, "Oh, to give it a try," and I was like, "Man, this is tasty. It's got lots of acidity, lots of body, super sweet, really clean. Like it's a great washed Colombian decaf."
You know what I also like about that? Diego Lopez is the name of a UFC fighter that's fighting Alexander Volkanovski for the featherweight title.
Oh, yes.
Well, I want to ask you, because when we were speaking, you had...
Oh, you stopped. Sorry, I was just expecting you to ramble for another 5 minutes. We're back.
I can keep going. We can have a UFC podcast.
We're good,
we're
good. Yeah.
But you told me that the suggested daily intake for a grown adult is 400 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
And as you just mentioned, 200 milligrams for a pregnant or nursing lady.
Yeah.
So what happens if you go beyond these levels, respectively?
Well, it really depends.
Asking for a friend.
It depends on your tolerance, right? So, like for us, we've been working in the industry. We have a tolerance to caffeine like crazy, right? So, like I said, your body upregulates adenosine receptors the more you drink. So, we actually have a pretty good tolerance. We don't have a negative effect a lot of times. There is a certain amount where you go over, and I would bet it's probably 600 milligrams or so, where you start to really feel some major impacts, right? And that's when you start getting jittery. That's when you start feeling like heart palpitations and things like that. That's when you start feeling like your brain's going to explode. You feel like you got some like high blood pressure in your head for some reason. And just in general, like sometimes for me, like over caffeination would make me sleepy, even in the morning. I'd have like 3 or 4 espressos, 5, a whole bunch of coffee really quick. And I'd be just like, I'm a zombie now. I didn't just stop. And the only thing that would seem like it would help is to sleep.
Yeah.
I
get that awful feeling when I'm like, feel so exhausted, but I know I'm caffeinated. I can just feel it in my eyes here for whatever reason on the sides. I'm like, I'm caffeinated, but I feel like I'm about to pass out.
This whole conversation reminds me of when I was at university and I had those assignments that were due at midnight and I just had to stay up and smash myself on caffeine.
Chug coffee, yeah. And I did the same thing, right? Like I had tons of caffeine when I was younger. And this is another thing. As you age, and you don't have to be terribly old, your body doesn't necessarily want to process coffee or caffeine as much, right? So this is liver function. There's an enzyme that's created in your liver called CYP1A2, and that can be a genetic thing. So genetically, some people have more of that function. I think the gene is P450. I think is what it is. But so people who naturally have more of that process caffeine more quickly, right? It also is associated with different foods. So there are certain foods that tend to increase your production of that enzyme, and some and also drugs that will inhibit the production of that. So that can have an impact on how well your body is processing it. But just in general, as people get older, and I've been told, I need to do some more research on this, but I've been told that women, as they get older as well, they actually slow down in their ability to process caffeine, right. and probably associated with that enzyme. And so naturally, they just can't tolerate caffeine as much. So there's a number of things that go, and like I say, everybody has their own, sort of tolerance and ability to process caffeine. So that's why we're trying to give these options to say, what's your need? What are you feel? Listen to your body, pay attention to yourself, and listen to some of the advice that we have, whatever else. There's some literature, but find your best fit. Because not everybody needs all the caffeine in the world, and not everybody needs low caffeine either, right?
Now, can I ask you a question? My marketing mind kicks in here with these 4 blends, and I have the question, not that you need to share like direct sales numbers or whatever, but just in terms of like the different products, is there one that's like outperforming the others? Or
I would say slow burn and low impact are the leaders right now.
Which is great, that they're not the what's out there. It shows that people are looking for that middle range kind of thing. Because as soon as you talk about all this stuff, my like video production mind kicks in where I'm like, you have such a great, unique selling point that it's like, so many different points to talk about, whether it's like the health bits, whether it's about like pregnancy, whether it's just trying to keep that ritual going. There's such a vast amount of stuff that you can talk about there that's really cool. So that's good to know that slow burn and low impact are kind of the ones that are selling.
By the way, I think you're going to smash it. I mean, it'll take you a little while, but I think you're going to absolutely smash it with this.
That's my thought as well. I'm like, I think it'll smash it, but it's like you're kind of doing that job for all the other competitors that will come afterwards, where you have to be the one educating the audience, which means it's a longer burn time and then less reward for doing all that. But I think it's great, and I think the reward will come. But there's a big education piece that kind of has to come out as well.
There is absolutely. And I mean, we fully expect that people will start copying, whether it's caffeine levels on the finished products, whether it's blends of different amounts of caffeine.
I'm probably going to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
probably one day.
Well, why not? I mean, it's
half
not
calf. It's just a good thing to offer for pregnant people in your cafe or caffeine intolerance.
Yeah, I mean, half calves have existed forever. I'm not going to say that I'm the first person to blend decaf and regular, but I think I'm the first person doing it with the intentions that we have behind it. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like it's not proprietary. Anybody can do that type of thing. But we have a
Don't
real...
tell them that.
Own it,
sorry.
Own it. It's proproprietary.
This is totally
Don't
new.
bother doing this.
It's patented.
If I could patent it, I probably wouldn't, because I think that's not a great move
grow
for the
the
industry.
pie.
I'd rather
Do the Martin Schlecky.
Yeah.
He's a good guy as well. Look at that, people. Not just good looks.
Our mission is more to help people feel better than it is to make all the riches in the world. So
on that of making people feel better, is there anything else that we haven't touched on in terms of how this product is going to help people? So we've talked about better sleep, anxiety, inclusivity. We're talking about was it liver functionality before? Yeah. Are there any other things that we haven't kind of touched on?
Oh boy. I think that's the main stuff.
Yeah, it makes you sexy as well, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely, right?
So you've been drinking a lot of it.
I'll tell you what. It gets rid of the circles under your eyes.
Oh, there you go. I need that.
When you sleep better, you feel better, right? And there's a lot of podcasters and people that I listen to, and there's a lot of people talking about wellness in relation to sleep. And so a lot of this product comes from, I want to sleep better. That's a huge talking point for it. So for example, I have my Apple Watch, right? And I didn't have one before we started doing this. And my wife got me one. She's like, you need to track your sleep because you're sleeping terrible, whatever else. And I was like, do I have sleep apnea? What's going on? So I got this watch, and we were just starting out, and I was getting, I think it was 15 minutes of deep sleep a night.
What's required?
Well, nothing's required as far as I know, but for good health, I think it's 10 or 15% of your total sleep time.
Okay.
Which I wasn't sleeping for whatever that is, 2 hours. I actually found I was getting pretty consistent amounts of REM sleep and core, kind of like the regular sleep, but it would then my waking and my deep sleep were the things that would fluctuate, right? So I was getting about 15 to 20 minutes of deep sleep every night. And then when we really got into the products and started using them all the time, I was getting I'm getting on average 40 minutes to an hour of deep sleep a night.
Okay.
Right.
So that's a marked improvement.
And usually most people would say for an 8 hour night of sleep, an hour and a half would be ideal.
What's the quality of life improvement you've experienced? Has there been one?
I wake up feeling like I'm actually refreshed. I don't have to drag myself out of bed. I know, right? I thought that for decades. It's like I remember when I was younger, I used to feel refreshed. How did that happen? And it's crazy. And I'm not going to say that the caffeine is the only thing that leads to that, right? Caffeine is a big part of the puzzle, though.
Yeah.
I think the amount of food you have late at night, I think the amount of alcohol you have, the amount of exercise you're having, all those types of things definitely add up to it. But I think the caffeine is a big one.
Yeah. Now, you were talking with Kirk about the difference of the ritual of drinking coffee and the comfort of drinking coffee.
Yeah.
What differentiates these, and why is it important?
Oh, well, they're very interrelated, and sometimes the ritual is the comfort, and vice versa. But a ritual is something that you almost feel like you have to do subconsciously, right? It's just something you automatically do. And so, when you have a ritual of coffee, and I think that there is personally a ritual that I need, like in the afternoon, I want a coffee, right? I don't want a tea. I don't want, a glass of milk. I don't want, whatever. I would just want a coffee.
Agreed. I hate when people are like, just have a tea. I'm like, get out of here.
Like, no.
Got caffeine too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, but some different actions going on with tea. But yeah, like it is also caffeine. But it's not the same, right? It's not the ritual that I have. And so there's the ritual of making coffee. Like as working in coffee, it's pretty common. Most of us make coffee all the time. There's a ritual there, and there's also a ritual of just like, I have this cup. This is my thing, right? It's something that I'm going to do every day. The comfort is more of the feeling. It's the byproduct of what you're getting from everything, right? So there, like I say, there are a lot of similarities. They can be the same thing, but they're also a separate entity.
Do you think that decaf's kind of been mistreated over the years?
Yeah.
Like everyone, it's very popular to rip on decaf, and I've been there,
Yeah.
I've done it, but like
He owns it.
but do you think that I'm matured now? I'm 30, getting on a bit, grey hairs. Do you think the tide's turning on that? Because I feel like in the mainstream, actually, decaf's become far more. It's viewed a lot more positive, and then a lot more people are drinking it. I've noticed.
There's a lot more demand for caffeine for decaf. There is in the past. There's definitely been mistreatment of decaf coffees, right? Like, and whether I think that most people are still trying to generally roast it okay. But there's a lot of people who will say, hey, you know what? We're going to warm up the roaster that first batch of the day that's always a little bit off. We're going to do the decaf because it doesn't matter, right?
So roasters themselves putting less effort into decaf.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because it's not really that they're not worried about it. They don't think it's great coffee. I think that has gone simultaneously with manufacturers of decaf coffee improving it, right? So we talked about the Brewers Cup champion who used decaf coffee. That is by nature someone making a better decaf, right? If it is a better raw product, then you have to roast it better as well. And so there's more and more roasters who are saying like, well, hey, this is actually really good if I do it right. There's no point in buying something that's really great if I'm not gonna put the effort into it. So there's definitely interest in that. There's more interest in low caffeine coffees, low caffeine varieties, partial decaffeinations, and things like that. So yeah, like it's just sort of gone hand in hand. It's grown. I think that the industry has started to recognize it a whole lot more. And I think that the general public has had a lot more demand for decafs. I know that there's probably like retail grocery stores probably have more demand for decafs even. And I know that cafes have increased it.
How do you feel going into business for yourself? Because obviously it's a tough journey at the start. It evolves over time. What's your experience been like, and what are the biggest lessons you've learned so far?
Oh boy, there's so much to do. There's a lot. It's terrifying. It's also refreshing, right? Because I think that I love details, right? I love getting into details of things. So for me, it's not really. It's not there's a lot of unknown, right? But as long as there's so many resources out there in the world in terms of how to start things, what to do. If you have a question, you just got to ask Google or ask ChatGPT or something. And like I'm not a huge fan of just spitting out whatever ChatGPT tells me, but it's like there are answers out there. There are resources you can
Has that
find.
helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, when you bounce your own ideas off it, it's a very different game of just tell me something.
Yes. Yeah. Well, if I ask it to put some, it's like, hey, I don't know how to format this thing for the purpose I need it for. Can you help me do that? And it's like, oh, here's how you would do that. And it, if I'm doing SEO or something, it's like, oh, great. That's a good start. It's a better start than me just typing a bunch of stuff on my computer and saying save. So, there are aspects of that. But like I said, the resources are vastly improved. The types of apps, the types of technology that's out there to use is great. So it's been a lot of work. We've spent the last 3 months just head down trying to get stuff done. I've also been doing consulting on the side because we have to make some living as well, other than just spending money. Um, and so, it's like, but we put a lot of work in. If you saw our website a month and a half ago, it would, or even 2 months ago, it would be like, what the hell? Like this is night and day difference.
Yeah.
And like we did have to have someone do the design work. And
I want to see what it was like before. You're talking like full clip art vibes.
No, I have a photo. I can show you a photo of my original stuff because I was like, this is a good idea. So my stoplight. If you can't see it, I can turn around at some point. I
can describe it to the audience. It's a stoplight on the traffic. We've got the red light, the yellow light, the green light, but now an added blue/purpley light.
He's turning around.
Turn around for the camera. There it is.
Yeah, give us a front back bicep.
And we got a butt wiggle. Hello. All right, this is great. We're going to get more viewers over to the YouTube. Make sure to check us out there
get a lot of that.
to see the butt
Pete
jump.
starts twerking.
So it's a 4-light signal, right? It's got a lavender on the bottom. The colors are slightly different. Those are the colors of our blend labels, right? But I started with just a regular stoplight, just red, yellow, green. And the whole point was like, hey, this is it gives you the idea of when to start, when to stop, when to slow down, right? And it's also, a stoplight is something recognizable. Everybody knows what a stoplight looks like. But I don't want to, I love the idea of doing something that makes people think like, what? Right? So it's like, that's a stoplight. But then you're like, what's the purple for? I don't understand that, right? And that's the whole point. Is like, I want you to ask questions. I want you to do a double take on it. Right?
Yeah.
I don't want you to say like, yeah, it's a stoplight. Okay, cool. I want you to be like, I think I know what that is. And I want you to think about it, right? Yeah.
Speaking of stoplights, I have no way to segue into this next question. So I'm just going to burn through the intersection and chuck a big left turn right here.
Skirt.
World Barista Champion in 2013. We'd be remiss if we didn't bring this up.
Oh, yeah.
Can we talk about, when you look at the competition now, what are the biggest changes you've seen from when you competed to now?
Oh, boy.
A lot more natural coffee.
A lot more natural coffee, a lot more single origins, a lot more geishas. The rules and regulations have evolved a bit. The competition as it is still very similar to when I did it, right? You still have a panel of 4 judges. You still have some technical judges and a head judge. You still have to serve an espresso and a milk drink and a signature drink. You still can't use alcohol. Sorry. I think that it's evolved in terms of what people have focused on. I think it's evolved in terms of the level of professionalism and the overall ability of the people doing it. So when I judge the World Barista Championship now, and everybody that I judge is at a much higher level than when I won it, right? And not to say anything bad about the people who were competing back then, by any means, but I think that the overall, just the average person competing is just at a higher level because there's so much more resource, there's so much more knowledge. There's people like me. There's people like Colt Road and everybody else out there who have a lot of knowledge with this competition and the various different competitions now. And they can give insights. They say like, hey, this is what the judges are looking for. This is what you should, kind of be thinking about and how you should be approaching it for the best results. And even from a speech writing perspective, people are much more cohesive. They have, a theme or they have a core value proposition or something like that they're revolving everything they're talking about around.
There's elements to this as well that people are going to great lengths to win it now. One of the things about the Dubai trip that I think was like kind of one of the best parts about it was that we took milk over for a competitor. And I actually got to try, he did a run through of the routine for me and some others a few days before. And I got to try his coffee and I kind of understood judging it now how to better win it. Because the judges have to process a lot of information
so much
really quick. So, selling it to the judge, like almost being a salesman is part of it, right? In
a way, yeah. Like,
and being comforting.
There's an element of the barista competition that's existed since the very beginning that is nobody wants to really admit, but the person has an influence over the judges, right? If you are, and it's really hard to be completely objective. So if you are just having a great time, someone's super personable, someone's super, relatable or whatever else, their coffee is probably going to start tasting better than other people's.
Of course.
Right? And that's the way that it is in a cafe too. So like
you have a better experience at a place, it tastes better. I say that every time. It's like someone's rude to you and then you get the coffee. Well, this is a bit crap, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's no purely objective experience out there in the world. Right. So, it definitely has an impact. But like from a judging perspective, that was what I did actually in 2012 before I won. I actually judged for a year. And I was like, oh my God, this is what you guys are looking for? Holy crap. And then it was like, oh, they have to juggle all this stuff.
Yeah.
They have to do all these things. So I'm not even going to try to talk to them right now. They need to judge and just make it as easy as possible for them. And that was part of my winning success, I guess you'd say.
I've seen you've been doing some content of late.
Yeah.
I like it. You're coming out of your shell a bit.
Trying.
Coming out of my shell.
What do you think the future holds for the coffee industry? Because right now we're experiencing what is a very, very turbulent market with coffee prices going up and down in the last few days. But for the most part, obviously it's up.
I think it's going to continue going up. I think we're seeing some small corrections and things based off of that. But
so what do you foresee becoming the new norm 5-10 years from now?
In terms of the C market or in terms of
that
coffee?
and the coffee industry more broadly?
I think that, one of the things that we're trying to do with our company is it's related to the C market, but trying to work much more cohesively with the coffee farmers that we're getting coffee from, to try and mitigate or remove the effects of the C market as much as possible so that, we know that we're giving them the income that they need, and they know that they're selling it for a price that we can afford, those types of things. I think that that'll become a big thing, probably because of this current situation with the C market. I think that there will be currently. I mean, there's a lot of speculation that a number of companies may go out of business because of it.
And I've been given some rumors of Australian roasters that are in serious trouble. And so we just saw Coffee Supreme. I probably should have mentioned this in the news, but Coffee Supreme just acquired Gabriel Coffee up in New South Wales.
Oh, wow.
So some consolidation of roasters. I spoke to a prominent Melbourne coffee CEO the other day on the phone who told me that I think 5 roasters have approached him to basically be acquired or absorbed. So they want to get out of the business. I've heard rumors of a major Australian roaster that's in serious trouble and on the verge of collapse.
Oh man, this is where if we had the Patreon for $5 a month, we'd be going, we'll be talking about all of this and more in our secret Patreon episode.
But suddenly everything's so much more real. I've heard of like serious price increases for wholesale customers, all sorts of things. So it's already, like the trouble's brewing.
Well, so I just went through a lot of difficulty with pricing our coffee, right? So we have an introductory price on our website right now. It's not the cheapest coffee out there. We have a sort of a scratched out price that is what it probably should cost. And I'm like, I don't want to overcharge people, right? But I want to have a successful business. And I want to have a successful business where we can pay the coffee farmers that we get coffee from real living wages. And then that can't happen if we're undercharging for coffee. So you're going to find that, there's going to be price increases. Coffee is going to cost a whole lot more money. It may be more popular to have the cafe experience as a real experience, and then looking for your value, whether it be making coffee at home or where your less expensive cafes or operations. I don't want to tell people to go to 7-Eleven and get a coffee because I don't think that's a good coffee, but I think there will be more automated options out there as well. And I think that's what we're coming to right now. Is automation has been around for a long time with coffee, and we're at a new point of automation, right? So we have new machines that make much better products. I think that you're going to see cafes, vending machines, whatever else, that are actually making a really good coffee for a reasonable price. And then you're going to have your cafes, and they're going to have to double down on experience and culture and other things that give the customers the value of the increased price that it's going to cost. So that's a big thing that I think is going to happen in the next several years.
Geez, what an answer.
Now, I've got a question, an idea that we've been talking about a while ago. Maybe it needs to be a collab post with us and we'll go and do it. But we've been wanting to do an episode where we just drive around to 7-Eleven, Coles, Macca's, and then maybe some like good cafes as like test ground, but actually test the caffeine in every single one of their espressos.
And the concentration.
And the concentration.
Yeah, that's there's some people in the States, I think, that do that with different chains.
All right.
There's a website called, what is it? It's like caffeine advocate or caffeine aficionado or something. I don't remember what it is. But they have these massive, and it's like they just did a Google keyword search of like how much caffeine is in, and then it's like how much caffeine is in Tim Hortons, how much caffeine is in Starbucks, how much caffeine is, all this other stuff. But they've done it, and there are different amounts. Like
Yeah.
some are wildly different from each
Well,
other.
I'm assuming
right?
that 7-Eleven, from what you see come out of those machines, is not going to be much caffeine. And it's funny because everyone's like, oh, I'm saving money doing this. And it's like, you'd have to have 3 of those to get the caffeine that you'd get from a double shot
You're
at
having a
cafe.
mid-strength beer right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what you're not having? Something hot.
A bit of a...
Something blazing hot. You
I haven't
feeling
had
that,
a hot
Rowan?
flash like this in a while.
Yeah,
I'm
it's been a minute.
Oh, it's time for an extra hot take with 2 sugars.
Oh, Pete,
we're back.
welcome to the shit show that is the It's Just Coffee podcast, where you get fooled into all these things. Now, this is the greatest segment in all of coffee podcastry. I don't know if you knew that, but it is.
Yeah.
Now, at the start, you were telling us, you were like, you're not sure if you had one. Have you had time to brew one up in your noggin as we've been chatting?
Well, I feel like we kind of covered it a little bit in the conversation.
That's all right.
well,
I still think you can hit it as aggressively as you want.
Down
and
the
just
barrel.
Have that hot take into the barrel of the
Down the
camera.
barrel.
Let's hear it.
So I think that nobody in the coffee industry knows how much caffeine is in their coffee, and it's about time that they figure it out.
I can confirm that's 100% true.
Yeah.
As a business owner and a coffee roaster, I guess myself, true. Rowan?
Absolutely true. And that kind of leads me into my hot take
Ooh.
in a similar vein, but I'm going to roll it out right here for everyone. It should be law that coffee companies have to list the amount of caffeine in their beverages on the product. We have it for sugar in soda. We have it for booze in our drinks. Why do we not know how much caffeine is in the coffee that we're buying? A, for safety, because some people need to know how much caffeine that they're having in their drinks. B, on the other side of the spectrum, value for the caffeine junkie who's out there buying a coffee, and you might be getting half the amount of caffeine in your drink thinking that you're getting a big kick. Otherwise, just go out and get a Red Bull.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That is huge. I'm going to disagree with you on that. I mean, I think
Well, I can stop you right there. You're wrong.
Okay, all right.
No, go ahead.
That's enough of the show this week, folks.
It's just coffee.
But I feel like an opt-in system. Like cafes are not equipped. How much was your caffeine reader?
I think they retail like $4,000 some dollars.
All right. So getting every roaster to buy another $4,000 piece of equipment, I don't know. In this climate,
I think more so a way that could it just be looked at like, oh, maybe they have to do it in the shop because of the way they extract it. But I'm like looking at an average for a certain coffee type. Maybe it's the roasters. Like, are you having from your bag of coffee like the caffeine for the brew type, or how is it listed?
We have it per serving, right? So we have recipes that are meant to dial in that level of caffeine,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So something like that where it's, I mean, you could get a lot more vague with it, right? You could be like an average for a double shot or whatever or a single shot is this.
Yeah. And well, I mean, we need to determine what a serving is,
Yes.
right? But we've determined what our serving size is, which is 10 grams of coffee.
Yep.
Right? 10 grams of coffee equals a good serving of coffee.
Yep.
But if you're having a double shot, you're having 20 grams of coffee.
Yep.
So that means that you're or thereabouts,
whatever.
right? That means you're having, instead of 125 grams, milligrams of caffeine, you're having 250 right in that one cup of coffee.
so go for the single shot of espresso, Pete's saying.
No, not necessarily. It depends on what you need. But
you're saying that.
I'm saying that, I'm saying that most people are having more caffeine than they think they are.
And I feel like it's now the normal in cafes that, like, especially with takeaways, cups being 8 ounces or, whatever it is, 8 to 12 ounces. I feel like the double shot is just the norm at a lot of cafes now, where consumers wouldn't even know that they're drinking a double shot.
That's the thing. There's no standard, right? So some like a traditional old cafe would be doing a single shot, 6-ounce milk drink, and then another one might be doing a double shot 8-ounce milk drink.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm just trying to keep the strength similar, but it's like, there's a lot of other stuff going into it.
Even in the comments on our videos, if you do like a cappuccino, people are like, well, that's not a cappuccino because a cappuccino is traditionally served with a double shot. And you're like, what? When? Since when?
In Italy, I think that was the thing. That was what I learned originally was like the third.
Yep.
Right? So third espresso, third milk, third foam.
Yeah, see, I think that's like, and which is right, but I think it was very different in Australia. I don't think we ever had the premise of the double shot. I think it was just a shot with foamy milk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the States, a cappuccino was a 16-ounce latte with, this much foam on top of it, right? So, there's no standards. Yeah. And so I think that would help.
All right, my extra hot take with 2 sugars goes in a different direction. So my extra hot take with 2 sugars is loyalty cards are cafe killers, and you should not be asking cafes if they have one. Boom. Because if you've read the news of late, record numbers of bankruptcies and insolvencies in Australia, record numbers of cafes going broke, record high coffee prices. Can a cafe afford to give away 10% of the drinks they make in that scenario? Not really. There'll be some that do. I just think if you're a customer, now is not the time to be asking for a loyalty card. If there's a place that does it, whatever, go to it. But if you're a cafe, don't feel compelled to provide one because your customers who are loyal to you are loyal to you for a reason. So Pete's talking about experience. Maybe your coffee's the best in the area. There's a variety of reasons, but loyalty cards, they're out in 2025.
Well, I think that if the only reason you have for someone to come back to your cafe is a loyalty card, then you need to figure out what your value is.
That was what I was going to say. I feel like it's a very low level kind of thing where it's like, I need someone to come back just because they're like, well, if I keep going there, I'll get a free coffee. But otherwise, I don't really want
You're effectively bribing them to come back in a way. Like, and look, I get it. There's a cost of living crisis in Australia and things are hard out there for people. No one's denying that. But if a double hot take, if I'm going to double entendre hot take, there's a lot of cafes that are probably going to close in the next year or two, and that's a good thing because there's far too many in this country.
That is the spicier take of the 2 takes.
All right, pew.
Half of the cafes are shutting down, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Kirk Pearson.
But it's because coffee's
25th.
It's because, and coming from Dubai, where we've just been, it makes you realize here how undervalued coffee is because a lot of people think, coffee's so expensive here, and it's such an ingrained part of our culture in Australia. But actually, it's so undervalued here compared to go overseas, go anywhere else, you will pay significantly more than you do in Australia, and the coffee quality will be lower. So, to summarize that, loyalty cards, they're out.
And to your point, I will say I don't think it's, obviously I know you're not saying it's good if places shut down for people's livelihoods, but in terms of the industry, it's something that probably needs to happen.
Well, the industry that we'll have left after in 2 or 3 years from now will be better. It will be better for those involved. There's too many roasters. There's too many
capitalism.
And look, I'm happy to be the bad guy on this one, but this is a market correction. What's happening? The coffee price is going up, and a lot of people have been arguing for many years that it needed to go up. This, to me, is a market correction.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think that the coffee producers are the ones who have needed the coffee price to go up. And the C market action that's happening right now isn't even necessarily all trickling down to them necessarily. So it is probably a necessary thing to, don't want to sound too much like, who is it, Zorg from The Fifth Element, where he wants to create chaos and destroy everything so that everything comes back better.
Thanos. Destroy all of human.
Well, he only wanted to destroy half.
Yeah.
He only wanted half. So, that's reasonable, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's stagnating, then the companies that come out the other side will have shown they have value, they have something that there's worth coming to, they have a community that's behind them, and they have a real business that's worth thriving.
Now, call out to the listeners if you're feeling anxious, not sleeping well, overall just low health experience, and you need to try something different. You need to go and try Caffeine Control Coffee. Where can they find you?
They can find us online, caffeinecontrol.coffee.
I've done that at goldenbrown.coffee. I love the .coffee website. Hello.
.coffee too.
Hello.
I think
We're all .coffee boys.
Yeah. I think we also have the .com.au redirecting to it. But
Same.
Yeah. But yeah, so you can find us online there. We are not in any shops yet, but we're looking at some potential wholesale opportunities and things like that.
Might hit you up.
What about the old socials?
Oh, you can find us on Instagram at caffeinecontrol.coffee. And we are on LinkedIn and Facebook, but we're still trying to figure those things out still. It's
full speed, slow burn, low impact, smooth sailing. There's one for you. Yeah. There's one for your wife if she's pregnant, they are pregnant.
There's also a 4-pack if you can't make up your mind.
4-pack?
Yeah.
Try them all.
Like a jumbo pack.
Yeah, well, we call it the caffeine reduction plan, right?
Oh.
Start with full speed or slow burn and work your way down. What you do is you reset yourself, get yourself a bit of a detox time. You take a week or so where you're just having, some decaf to fill the spot, and then come back to whether it's 100% caffeine or less, you will feel the effects of caffeine way more.
Please make that caffeine reduction plan part of your elevator pitch. I'm just saying. That was great. That was great.
And it has free shipping too. So there you go.
Free shipping.
Speaking of free shipping, get yourself shipped over to It's Just Coffee Pod on Instagram. You can email us at hello@itsjustcoffeepod.com.
And if you need some packaging for your coffee, we've got a great sponsor for you and a great packaging supplier for you. That is EcoBarista. So ecobarista.com.au. Get 15% off your first order with EcoBarista.
They're the best. I use them. You use them.
Hey, do you use them?
Not yet, but we're looking at it.
There you go. If you sign up, you can get 15% off your first
absolutely.
purchase.
I'm in.
All right,
Russ, there you go. Look, we got you.
We'll get you in
Count
contact
that
with
ticket
Uncle
on the list.
Hey, there's a line that we do.
I was going to ask you, but you're not going to get the bit. Now, I just wanted to ask, Kirk, are you an eco warrior?
No. I'm an eco barista.
It's still here in 2025. Hey, thank you so much for dropping by the pod,
Thank you.
chatting with us. It's been great. We'll have to get you back sometime again and talk about the old tales of the World Barista Championship days.
Ooh.
If you'll,
I am happy to anytime. I love talking about stuff.
Absolutely. And we need to steal that $50,000 caffeine reader so we can drive around and check out 7-Eleven and Starbucks and do all of that. Any final words for the people before we sign off?
I think for me, we started this business because we want people to feel better. We want people to get the effects of caffeine. Caffeine's not bad, but just having some more information, I think, can help everybody a little bit.
Agreed.
Yeah, I like that.
Final words from me. Kirk, great to have you back from Dubai. Glad you're in one piece. Looking forward to the coffee break where we can chat a little bit of Dubai.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for the wonderful listenership that you provide. As always, please tell 2 friends. It really helps out. Subscribe. We'll still keep doing free podcasts for you. So that just about wraps us up here for this week on
It's Just Coffee. Hey.
Oh, I missed it.
So we'll go again.
Sorry, I was
3,
just
2,
too busy.
1.
It's Just Coffee.
Hey. See you next week.
I was too busy staring at you, like mesmerizing.
Beautiful.
It's really,
Flowing.
really
like a
entrancing.